All right, so what I have here is an RS5 R30A transmission out of a Nissan 300ZX that I'm gonna be attempting to rebuild. So currently there's just not a lot of videos on YouTube about how to do this, or really anybody doing this at all. And most of the guys on the Z forums will just tell you to go buy a brand new one, since they are still available from Nissan. But after shipping and everything, you're looking at probably around 2,800 bucks for that. That's just not a very cost-effective option, and in my opinion, it'd be more fun and cheaper to try and rebuild one. So I just want to document this and get this out there for anybody else wanting to take on a project like this. I've never done this with this transmission. I've taken them apart before, but never really with the intent to put back together. So for this, I got this kit right here from USA Standard Gear. Comes with all the synchros and input and output shaft bearings. Not every single bearing is in here, but it should be enough to get the job done. So this kit I bought off Summit for about 400 bucks, I think. So I can leave a link to this kit for anybody wanting to pick this up. It also comes with these gaskets here for the input and output shaft, which is nice. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and get started on this. I'm just gonna take everything off of the transmission. So including the shifter, all of the linkage, sensors, the mount here, the starter, throwout bearing, all of that is gonna come off first before I start doing anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Okay, so I pretty much got everything off, except for these two sensors right here. I believe this is the clutch safety tells the engine if the transmission's in neutral to be able to start. And then this is reverse lights. I might have them backwards, I don't know. But either way, both of these are pretty stripped. They're both 19 millimeter. I had the same issue taking apart this transmission over there. I think I still have the sensors. They're not super expensive if you run into the same issue, but they do need to come off no matter what. So I'm gonna try my best right here to get these off and see what happens. All right, so I got them off. I had to hit them with some vice grips and they eventually came off, but probably be replacing those. Either way, next thing that we gotta do is take off the shifter plate. There's already 2 broken bolts in here. I have no idea why somebody would try and take that off, but whatever. So that's gonna come off next, as well as this input shaft cover. Just bolts all the way around and it should slide right off. Okay, so got this all unbolted here. Should just slide right out. There will be a gasket in between there. I think it stayed on there. Set that aside. So I just noticed this right inside of the input shaft cover here. Not sure if you can tell, but this is just metal shavings. So this is going to be really interesting. I definitely think that the shift fork between 3rd and 4th gear is completely destroyed, but that might not be the only failure point in here, just given all the metal that I've already seen. But anyways, the next thing that we need to do is get ready to split the case. So right here, right in front of that bearing, or sorry, right behind the lip of it, is a snap ring. There is another snap ring right up top, and I believe that is it. I don't think there's one for that lower bearing, but those have to come off before we split the case. And then coming around back, these roll pins right here have to come out. Both of these have to come out. This is what holds the shifter in neutral. Pretty sure those are going to be spring loaded as well. But there's one on either side. I think they're about a 22 millimeter. And then we can start unbolting the center of the case. All right, I put all this back together just to show you how it comes out. But those pins, you kind of got to just knock them into the case and then pull them out later with a magnet or something. There's really nothing you could do to catch it or anything like that. But once you knock them out, this just slides right out. Hard to do with one hand. There we go. Set that aside, and then this piece comes out with it. And this one here, you can only push back till it hits the back right here. Once the case gets split, you'll be able to pull that one out. And that's pretty much the next step here. I was way off on the size on these. This is a 27 millimeter. And once you get them off, they are different sizes. So they're spring loaded. There's these little pins in here, and that's what holds the shifter in neutral. The one on the driver's side is longer, as you can see. So that's the driver, this is the passenger. All right, so all those bolts are out now to be able to split the case. And the way this comes apart is there is a back half right here, a center housing, and then the bell housing. And I actually do have a set right here just to show you how it comes apart. So that's the bell housing, and this part right here is the tail housing. And the center is what holds everything together. So that's this piece right here. The input shaft, the output shaft, and the counter shaft are all gonna stay with that center housing. So all you gotta do is separate the case and pull the two pieces apart, the bell housing and the tail housing. The best way I found to do it, at least to get it started, is to hold the top of the bell housing and hit the input shaft with a mallet. Be careful doing that, but it'll eventually start to separate, and then you can get like a chisel in here and separate it the rest of the way. All right, so I finally got the bell housing off. As soon as I took it off, these fell out of the bottom of it. All of these are pieces of this 3rd and 4th shift fork right here, which is totally destroyed, as you can see. Split in half. I'm not sure what happened to that, but that is why this transmission will not shift into 3rd and 4th gear, or at least will not move in 3rd and 4th gear. But upon initial inspection for the rest of this transmission, I mean, everything here is just coated in metal, but the gears themselves don't look too bad. So these brass pieces right in between there, those are the synchros. All those are getting replaced. They're super worn on this transmission. I don't know how many miles this has on it, but the dog teeth on the gear right here, that is what we want to look for wear. And from what I can tell so far, they actually look pretty good, not very rounded off. So those are in mesh with the gears themselves right here. So what happens is this collar slides over the top using the shift fork. So the shift fork will slide this over the top of those dog teeth and engage the gear, and that's what drives it. So those little teeth right there, that's what wears the most, and if those are too worn, then you also need to replace the gears. But from what I can tell, all of these so far actually look really good. So I'm gonna take the tail housing off and see what we see under there. Okay, tail housing's off, and this is what it will look like underneath. So pretty much everything in here looks okay other than that shift fork that I mentioned earlier. So I think that's the only other part that I'm gonna need for now. All the gears look okay. On this side is reverse for sure, and I think fifth gear. But everything seems to be all right. So next thing you want to do once you get to here is we're going to pull these shafts off. So this one, I believe, just slides out. This one, you've got a bolt on this side, on this fork. Once you take that off, those shafts will slide out, and this fork should just come up with it. Then down here, you got this shift fork. Once you take this one off, this will also just come out. All right, so got those off, all the shift forks. And the next thing to do is gonna be to work on this side, the output shaft, and this down here, which houses fifth gear and reverse gear. As far as the input shaft side and counter shaft, the only other thing that we need to take off is gonna be this input shaft bearing right here, which is just held, get this light out of the way, by a snap ring on it. So I'm gonna do that, take that off, and then coming around to this side, for the output shaft, there's another snap ring right there, and then that bearing, I believe, is pressed on. So this is where you're gonna start to need different tools. So bearing pullers, things like that, 3-jaw pullers are gonna come in handy. They're not super expensive at like Harbor Freight or something like that if you don't already have some. Then down here, there's another snap ring right there holding that on. And again, another one right there. And then all of this stuff will slide right off. All right, so I got all of those snap rings off. Just wanted to note that after you pull the snap ring off of this bearing right here, the one right in front of it, you're gonna have this spacer right here, and following that are these 2 half-moon clips. So you can just pry those off with like a screwdriver or something. And then these 2 snap rings here, the smaller one is right in front of this bearing, and the bigger one was right in front of this reverse gear here. Once you get those off, you're gonna have to pull this off using a puller of some sort. I had to use a 2-jaw puller because the tolerances between this gear and where the bearing sits is super tight, so I could only get 2 jaws in there, but it worked fine. Just pull that off. Right between the snap ring and the bearing is this little spacer here, and I just wanted to note that it's really important to stay super organized during this, because there's lots of these, there's going to be a lot more of these little spacers and snap rings and all sorts of things that can easily get lost. So just make sure that you're keeping everything organized and in the order that you pull it off of. But after you get that bearing, this reverse gear just slides off. There are needle bearings in here. Just keep them with the gear, and this anti-rattle thing here stays with the gear as well. So after that, the next thing to do is going to be to pull this bearing off using some sort of puller. I think I'm going to call it for today and do that tomorrow though. All right, so it's the next day. I went ahead and just pulled this bearing off using this bearing puller. This is going to be really handy to have if you don't already have one of these. It gets kind of far into the shaft, and we're going to need to pull a bunch more stuff using this or some pullers, some 3-jaw pullers, something like that. But I had to use the extensions on here. Anyways, once you press that off, mine came right off. It was really easy, but bearing comes off. This sleeve comes right off. And then the next thing to do is going to be pulling this off. So this is pressed on here. Pull this off, and then this gear will come right off. All right, so I just pulled this hub I actually had to put my three-jaw puller on the gear behind it and pull them both off at the same time. I got a set of helping hands now. I'm going to need it for this input shaft bearing, which I tried to do a little earlier and wouldn't come off. So that's going to be helpful. But anyways, take that off. Gear comes off. Needle bearings are in it. And the next thing on this side is the speed sensor. Okay, so instead of doing the speed sensor first, you actually got to take off the reverse gear right here. Just put the puller right behind the dog teeth there. Then that comes right off. It's just splined. I just put everything back together on this side just to kind of explain how everything comes off, because we were doing it in the wrong order, if you couldn't tell. But first things first is this reverse gear. This has to come off before anything else. So set that aside. You're gonna have to use a puller or something like that to get it off. The next thing is this synchro right here for reverse. After that is going to be this sleeve. You can just slide right off. There are clips in here, so make sure you do not lose those. Set that aside. And now, after that, you're ready to pull off the speed sensor. So I had to use one of the bearing pullers like this with all of the extensions maxed out, because it's way down on the shaft, sits right here. And we had to use heat to get it off, so hopefully you guys have a lot better luck. It was pretty difficult to get off, but after that, you can take that all the way off of there, and now you're ready to pull this 5th gear assembly. So this is also pretty much all the way back, so I had a hard time getting a puller behind it. I had to grind it down just a little bit to make it fit. But after that, you can pull that off. It is splined right here with the hub. If I can do it. I already did this once, like I said, but I put it back on here. All right, there we go. So this will come off like that, and this little spacer here sits on this side of it. Needle bearings in that side too. Okay, and then after that, you're completely done with this side. It's pretty much ready to go in the press. The only other thing that I want to do on this side is going to be to take off this input shaft bearing. Okay, so got this input shaft bearing off. I had to use heat on this one too, but then it came off. The other thing that I did was take this plate off. That is just sitting right here. There's 4 12mm bolts for it. And then right after that, this 5th gear is splined to the output shaft, so I just pulled that off too. And now it is completely ready to press. So as far as pressing goes, if you don't have a hydraulic press, I just got this one from Harbor Freight. I've had it for a while. I use it for a lot of other things too. But if you don't have one, you can go take this to a shop somewhere and have them press it out. But either way, you're gonna have to do this no matter what. And what we're doing is we're pressing the output shaft and the counter shaft out of this center housing. And you have to do them both at the same time, or at least alternate a little bit. because as you can see, the clearances between here and here are very tight. If you try and press this one, it's going to run into this. If you try and press this one, it is going to run into this. So you have to do them simultaneously, and I'm going to show you now how I am going to do this. I'm going to be using the transmission case to press these out. So here's what I got going on. I got an output shaft right here just for reference, but this does not fit between my press. The gears are too big. So if yours does, then you don't have to do any of this right here. You can just press it like normal. But for me, I am using the bell housing and just put the centerpiece right back on top of it. You will have to press out the bearing on the inside right there of that before you do this. But now with this setup, basically just gives me more clearance to be able to push both of these out. So again, you got to alternate between this one, and be careful that this center housing is aluminum and it can crack. So if it starts to get really tough to press, just stop and figure it out before you just keep going. But that's what I'm going to be doing right now. So got it all pressed out here. If you were doing it with the method that I was just explaining, one thing you got to keep in mind is that this input shaft, it's a counter shaft, bottoms out on the case at some point before it's all the way pressed out. So what I had to do is put these spacers right here in between the bell housing and that center case right there, and it was just enough room to be able to press it out. So other than that, it really wasn't too hard. If you start to feel a lot of resistance, something's wrong. These aren't pressed on there all that hard, so just stop and figure out what your issue is before you keep going. Otherwise you will crack or break something. But after you press it out, it comes out in 3 pieces. The input shaft could fall out of the bottom, so make sure that you have something beneath to catch it, just in case. Or like for me, it just stayed in the bell housing there. It did not fall out. But this is the input shaft. Here is the output shaft, and here is the counter shaft. And once you get everything out, it's there's a lot of loose pieces everywhere. Like this shift collar with these clips in it just came right off. So just make sure that you find everything and basically just have something below to catch anything else that falls. But now we can move on to basically stripping this output shaft of everything. So once you press out the output shaft here, there's a lot of things that are already loose. For instance, this gear comes right off. There is a washer right on top of there. Needle bearings that it sits on, synchro, just like everything else so far. And then this collar right here, there are these clips. These just fell out for me as soon as I pressed it out. But these sit right inside the hub like that, and the little notch in the middle faces up, just in case yours fell out too. This little retainer in here is supposed to hold those in. It did not do that for me. Everything just kind of fell apart after I pressed it out. But that's kind of the order of operations for all of that stuff. And now it's pretty much just going to be pulling off everything else on this shaft. And that's about it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So one thing I forgot, on this counter shaft here is this bearing right here. I had to press that off, but that is it for this. I do have a new one of these with my kit. If you don't, you can totally just leave it on there. But anyways, coming back over to here, I already got all this stuff off, but this hub, I had to use a puller on the back side of this gear, and then it all comes off together. So got the hub, synchro in here, and there's actually 2 synchros. So make sure you keep all that stuff together. These are tapered, so you can't put them on backwards or anything. It all just kind of fits together like that. Then the gear comes off with the bearings, and that is it for that side. On this other side here, you will have a check ball right here, which I just took some needle nose pliers and pulled it out. Looks like that. But after you get that off, you're probably gonna have to put this in the press. That's what I did. Press on the back side of this. Do not press on this right here. This does not come off the same direction. So you'll have to get on the other side between the gear and this piece right here, and press that way. But after that, this will come off. Stand it up here. Maybe, never mind. All this will come off and out the shaft at that point though. Again, kind of the same deal with the synchros. So you got the hub with the synchro there, and then the same kind of tapered synchro on the inside. 2 pieces right there. And then there is the gear. So that is a complete teardown now. There is the output shaft. So the only other thing that I really need to do is going to be to press these bearings out of the center housing. If you don't have any new ones, or you don't think you need to replace them, then you probably don't have to do that at all. I'm going to do it. I have new ones. But that's pretty straightforward. I'm not going to film that or anything. I did go ahead and order one of these shift forks, brand new from Nissan, which, by the way, a lot of this stuff is since been discontinued. So if something else is broken with yours, you might have to source a used one or something like that. But I'm going to be waiting on that new one for about a month and a half as of recording this video. I do have this one over here from a different transmission, but it is also broken, as you can see in there. So I am not going to run that. So I'm going to go ahead and end this video here, just as a part 1, a complete teardown of this transmission and pretty much just how everything comes apart. Eventually I will be making a part 2 on how everything goes back together. I can do pretty much everything without needing that shift fork, so hopefully I get all that done soon. There's a lot of other things I could work on with this car, and I'm building a VG over there, which I'll probably also put on YouTube. But anyways, that's gonna do it for this one.